Welcome everyone to the September 23rd V3 implementation call. We appreciate you being here with us this morning. Let me switch to our agenda. Light agenda today. We'll get through all of our topics. We're going to start this morning with Laurel Bader. She's going to go over a maintenance update with us.
All right, good morning, everyone. So our maintenance update for October, we have a couple of things planned. We will be deploying the core features of version 3.5.0 data acceptance during the October maintenance window. So what this means is if you are compliant and ready, you will be able to submit your demographic and EMS data sets to us after that window has concluded. We're still working on the StateDataSet acceptance, and we expect to have that deployed and ready to go by the end of the year. In addition to the 3.5 deployment, we'll also be doing some of our sort of standard web patching, maintenance stuff, and the web services will probably be down for about a day as we're working through that. If you have any questions, feel free to ask them now, ask them in the chat, or send us an email.
Are there any questions for Laurel while we have her? Okay. I'm going to insert a comment really quick here between items number 2 and 3. I just wanted to share with everyone where you can find the resources available to you from the annual meeting that we had last week. If you go to the NHTSA main page, nemsys.org, under using EMS data, you can go to NHTSA 101, and this is just a resource page that is still under development, and we're adding resources here and still editing the presentation, so bear with us as we make this a little bit more user-friendly in the future. Right up at the top, we've put our annual meeting resources. You've got the agenda, and then you've got the presentations from all 3 keynote speakers, and also the meeting facilitation slides for the whole annual meeting. There's also an updated ET3 data workflow diagram that's included in with these resources. So these are available to you off of the website, and let us know if there are other resources from annual meeting that that you would like to have access to. Oh, and then take you back to the agenda. I'll take you back to the right page. So next up, we've got Clay, and Clay is we're gonna have a discussion about ET3.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. I am very appreciative. We've got so many folks on the phone. We'll make this meeting concise. My goodness, you spent 12 hours plus with us last week. Most of you, thank you so much for doing that. There's an item on the agenda today to summarize kind of what occurred at the meeting. We took some great notes, and our promise to you was that we would collect action items and deliverables associated with each of the topics, and then be able to roll those out over the course of the next few months and develop some projects related to those. Rather than trying to summarize all those and go through those, I thought we'd probably just start with the most timely and topic, and that was clear during the meeting, was ET3. So we've had 2 official note takers that were taking notes, and then also we've reviewed the recording that was associated with the questions that were asked after the excellent presentation that was given by Mr. Neil Milan, who's with us today on the call, with John on the technical side representing CMMI and the ET3 project. So those folks are with us. Wanted to go through each of these action items and drill down on a couple of them with some additional information. You know, keep in mind, we've only had a couple of days, really business days, since the meeting ended. So a lot of work has happened already, but it remains much in flux. And so like documenting or formalizing these conversations, that will happen over the next week or so. So wanted to make sure first that we had captured everything that's important here. And then we have some updates in regards to some scheduling, to the schematron, the ET3 Schematron, and some other work that we've been able to accomplish just in the couple of days, a couple of business days that have occurred since the meeting. So I'm just going to run through these just real quickly. One thing I will just briefly reemphasize that Julianne mentioned that there has been a new revised ET3 data workflow diagram that's been posted on the website. Neil, if I may just put you on the spot real quick, I apologize. I think you'll be involved in the discussion that happens here in just a couple minutes, but could you let the states know and the vendors know what changes were made to that document? I think they were minor.
Right, Dr. Mann. It was a minor one where we had a slight typo on WSDL. It looked like we were putting in a new DSL format because it read WDSL. So just wanted to make sure people were aware that we're using the existing as opposed to prompting a whole new technology for PCR submission. So relatively minor, but wanted to fix that typo since it is a technical document.
All right, thank you, Neil. Appreciate that very much. And so that has been corrected and been posted. So feel free to access that under Nemesis 101. All right, let's, I'm just going to read through these and then I would ask the participants here on the call if there are adjustments or like further clarifications that they'd like to make to either to any of these deliverables. Let's just go through all of those with the idea of like firming up the ideas, firming up the evidence associated with their need. And then we'll probably drill down into a couple. I know there's at least been a couple of these where there's been some other progress made, and we'll hear from Josh and from Neil and John from CMMI. But let's walk through them and just make sure that we have everything down that folks thought was important for us to talk about and have as deliverables and action items as we prepare for the rollout of ET3. So the first one I have listed here is to provide information about data submission webinars to participants, states, and vendors. Can use Google Group and other listservs, vendor-specific webinar to go over the technical specifications of the project. I think this was related to a comment made by Neil Milan about there will be data submission webinar put together for participants, and I think there was an interest in the overall idea of allowing vendors and states to participate in that, just so they can keep up on the information that's rolling out to the participants. Any other comments about that idea? We'll dig into greater detail into each of these things and modify them to make sure that we're meeting the need, but I just want to make sure the overall ideas are captured. Okay, item 2 is to build an ET3 scenario-based use cases so vendors can better understand how each of the participants will be reporting and properly documenting for each of the new ET3 scenarios. Three is to make available criteria for determining which records are new and which are resubmitted and overwritten, and release those technical documentation to vendors. Neil talked a little bit about in the data workflow, the process that will be used to kind of ensure that a record is finalized. There'll be a delay before a record is forwarded into the further process within the CMS enclave. And we talked about that a little bit. That's probably important for vendors to understand that process so they can ensure that their processes are meeting those requirements. We'll clearly talk more about that. Any further clarifications needed on that? Clearly we'll dig into the details of these, but I want to make sure the overall idea is captured correctly. All right, there was a comment about reviewing the idea of custom elements versus extended elements for facility codes. Specifically related to that was to do kind of a review of the ET3 specific facility codes that will be important for documenting use of the models, and to determine if any of those codes would collide with any state facility codes. And Josh has done some high-level work there. We'll come back on that issue, but have we captured that idea correctly?
I think it was maybe for facility types would be it.
Oh, facility types. Yeah, thank you.
Hi, Clay. This is Kelly with Image Trend. I've had one of our state vendors put in a request to potentially add to dagency.10, I believe. They're looking for a way to track if agency is a ET3 participant. Is that something that you guys would consider adding to that field?
That's a good idea, Kelly. We haven't considered that at all. I'll document here that idea.
Hey, Clay, we did talk about that a little. The ET3 doesn't need that information because they're only getting data from participants. So it's not something that ET3 needs to receive.
Yeah, so Kelly, maybe we can talk a little bit more here in a moment on the need, whether it's the state requesting that or some other entity.
Okay, that sounds great.
Thanks, Kelly. Right, number 5, work with the TAC to set up testing opportunities or a schedule for vendors and ET3 developers. I think Neil has some more information for us related to that. I think we've captured that idea okay. Number 6, formalizing vendor-specific ET3 onboarding technical documentation. Seven, adding, this was basically a combination of comments and just our effort based on what we heard overall to try to provide improved kind of communication between the vendors and states and ET3. The idea of adding just a routine section in the bi-monthly calls that we're on right now, where we have an ET3 technical session where folks can exchange ideas with ET3 representatives. Okay, and finally, there was a number of specific questions that came in related to kind of some technical aspects or business aspects of how to handle certain situations within the ET3 model. Those were all kind of circumscribed with this idea of developing some type of an FAQ format for participant states and vendors for ongoing questions that may relate to specifics of using the model or documenting use of the model. And there may be some CMS processes already in place to do that. We can talk about whether there's a need to do something different there, but I think that was added there to kind of encapsulate this idea that there were lots of questions that still could be valuable to answer. Okay, fantastic. I'll just ask real quickly, are there any other, do folks remember any other kind of overarching ideas that were brought up during that session other than these 8 that we need to add to the list?
Hi, Clay. This is Kelly with Image Trend again. In discussing the ET3 workflow with some of our states, I do think there's a lot of confusion on the the types, the DE disposition.21. And you did send a great follow-up email with some specific information of what those values for federally qualified health center and quality health care provider and some good definitions. I could think that there's still some confusion though, so I was hoping that maybe ET3 could speak on what those values represent and give some more definition around those particular values.
Okay, great. Yeah, that's a great idea, Kelly. So that the definitions associated with those specific designations, CMS designations for those participating in the model. Okay, great. And Kelly, we sent those to you just based on your request, but haven't made those universally available yet. So we'll have to do that for all to have as well. So thank you, Kelly.
Yeah, thank you for responding. I appreciate it.
Yeah, Peter, do you have a comment? Right. Okay. Okay. Fantastic. Any other overarching ideas that we want to make sure that we cover? Okay. Let's. There's a little bit, as I mentioned, there's been a little bit of work on some of these issues. I'm gonna maybe drill into some of these a little bit. As I mentioned again, this is very preliminary. We'll put together a more formal approach to all these issues. Kelly raised some great ideas as well that we need to make sure that we dig into. Let's just bring kind of everybody right up to date on the work that's been done on these topics, and then if there are other things that kind of come from the conversation that will be valuable to dig into, we can do that. I'm gonna put a couple of people on the spot just because I know this work is actively going on, but just we're hoping that we could get some high-level updates from both folks. Josh, if it's okay, I'm gonna put you on the spot. I know you've done some initial work just based on information that's available on the NEMSIS website regarding the ability or the likelihood of some kind of collisions between state designated facility types and then the ET3 specific facility codes. And we'll also want to talk about the definitions of those facilities. They're indicated in e-disposition 21 also based on what Kelly said. But can you give us kind of a high level overview, Joshua, kind of what you found so far?
Yeah, we've received feedback to the effect that saying, hey, instead of doing custom elements for ET3 that extend existing elements, it'd be easier if these were standalone custom elements. And we thank Frank from R1 RCM and Juan from Florida for articulating the perspective on that. We met with the ET3 team on Monday to discuss that topic. And of course, they're on the call today and are available for questions or feedback. They would like to continue forward with the approach of extending those two elements, e-disposition.12 and 21. The rationale behind keeping with that approach is number one, they are in fact values that are conceptually extending those elements. They are new dispositions for EMS and new facility types that EMS has not utilized in the past. Number two, it allows for all of the ET3 possibilities for disposition and for facility type to be in one element. So, one of the ET3 dispositions is in fact a standard value in e-disposition.12. And there are several ET3 alternative destination types that are in fact existing values in e-disposition.21. From a user perspective, the EMT or paramedic filling out the reports, the goal here is to minimize the number of additional data elements that they have to touch. And so ET3 team preferred the idea of adding a couple choices to existing elements. So those were the reasonings behind their rationale as we discussed the pros and cons and considerations with them on Monday. I did a little bit of additional analysis just from state information that has been submitted in state data sets. I'll share my screen real quick here, just a second. So I used the custom element library to look at any elements that states have, custom elements that states have defined in their state dataset files that extend e-disposition.12 and e-disposition.21. And you'll see here, there's one in Georgia that actually extends e-disposition.21, but they have a typo in their documentation and it makes it look like it extends e-disposition 12. but here are the ones that truly extend edisposition.12. I reviewed the custom values from each of these states and did not find any custom values in those states that would be similar or confusingly similar with the new types of dispositions that ET3 is looking at of doing these treatment in place dispositions. Now I will note, however, that I looked at a bunch of state schematron files and I found probably over 20 states that had rules in their state schematron files that alluded to the fact that those states probably had custom values for edisposition.12, but those states had not published those custom values in a state data set. So in those states, we have no idea what the custom values mean since they haven't been described in a state data set. So there is that caveat. The closest potential for conflict was in Georgia, where they did treat and release with referrals, but that is still distinctly different from a transfer of care on scene or via telehealth. Then I ran the same sort of analysis for a type of destination as well to see if there were any potential conflicts from existing published state custom values. So that summarizes our conversation with the ET3 team and just some additional analysis that we've done with the data available to us. And I'll kind of pause there and see what questions or comments people have. And of course, I may or may not be able to answer those, but we have Neil and John on the line as well.
Hey Josh, this is Kelly with ImageTrend again.
Yeah.
Some of the feedback I've heard from several states as well as our development team is concerned that the data set is still in development. So if we're going to launch this in January, do you guys have a cutoff of when this data set will be completed and no additional changes would be made to it?
Yes, the plan is to finalize it by the end of September. So we've got one week left.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much.
Yeah, this is Clay. I'll read a couple of the chat comments that came in. Jen from GMR says states knowing ET3 participants might be important if there is ever a rule clash between the state and ET3. So hence some of the work that we have done and just described. Maybe emphasizes the importance of states keeping their state data sets up to date and how helpful that is for many partners to be able to evaluate the consistency among the state data sets. So Jen, any other part of that question? I know you brought that question in before Josh's explanation. Any other aspects of that are important?
Hey Clay, this is Juan.
Yeah, Juan.
One of the biggest issues we had was not necessarily the collision of the field values, but implementing multiple specifications for a field. So we extended here at the state level, ET extends it at their level, National extends it at their level. Now the vendors have to keep 3 different implementations for the same field. That was the issue that we were having concerns with, because some of the vendors cannot do that with the current, just the infectious disease elements, and therefore they're not submitting those elements to Florida because they can't do an implementation for that plus the implementation for our custom elements.
Okay, once you're giving an example of the infectious disease national custom elements that they weren't able to adequately implement those across your state. Is that what you're saying?
Correct.
Okay. So yeah, it's a good point. If there's multiple extensions on those elements, that can get incredibly complex. Other comments on what Juan has stated? Okay. Thanks, Juan. Amber from Colorado also indicated, has there been Has there been any thought to making destination type or edisposition.21, making that a one-to-many instead of a one-to-one? I don't remember specifically. I think we talked about this initially, Josh, early on, but it was considered to be a change to the national standard and would be more disruptive than potentially helpful at this point. But clearly was, I think we discussed it. Is that correct, Josh? I'm sorry, I'm just, we're kind of off the cuff here, but let's have the conversation.
Yeah, I remember when we put out NEMSIS 3.5, there was another data element. It was a hospital capability that got changed to a one-to-many because the recognition was, well, they could be taking the person to that hospital because they are a burn center and a trauma center. They're using both of those capabilities. And this thought is in a similar vein, that some facilities that people go to are actually multiple types of facility. But it hasn't been really analyzed yet. It would be a revision to the standard, and it would actually be a significant one because of how DEMDataSet is organized, where facility type is sort of there's a chunk of data that has facility type, and then it lists all the facilities that have that facility type, as opposed to a list of facilities and each facility having its facility type. Changing that to a one-to-many would have been easier. So it would definitely take some analysis, but I think from a business perspective, it needs to be considered.
So based on that discussion, Amber or Doug, any initial thoughts or additional thoughts?
I think this change for the ET3 is a great change, but however, it's messing with the state's ability to collect data as normal. So states that report off of these different types of facilities is now going to not have that capability. And we have a lot of states that report off of these different, how many emergency departments you have versus, urgent cares. This will eliminate that factor. I think the one-to-many is the way to go, or we need to find another way to address the ET3. ET3 is such a small population of these facility types that I think we're adjusting something that works now for the 1%. And I think it's going to have or prevent states and national level queries to go bad. I think that's probably my approach.
Yeah, thanks, Doug. That's a good point, and that was part of the conversation as well as to whether you're right. It's a small number of facilities that will be involved in this, and does that really speak to the need to make a modification midstream to 3.4? But Doug, it sounds like you're still supportive of that.
I would rather this be a one-to-many, or that we find another solution for the ET3. I think all of our counts for how many emergency departments we have, how many urgent cares are all going to be thrown off because of the ET3 program. I would rather this be a one-to-many or find another solution for the ET3 destination.
Okay, Doug. And do you have ideas for the other solutions that we could at least potentially think about?
I would hate to say it, but yeah, I would do a custom element or add an element at this point. It just seems like we're taking something that works, that we can get reliable national data, and we're throwing a wrench in it for the ET3 program. And I think the ET3 program is great, but I think we need to find a better solution than this Band-Aid, because we're going to go back and say, why is our emergency department counts off? Why is our urgent care facilities now being changed? Especially if this program gets traction and it keeps on expanding. I think that we're going to be messing with our ability to get those precise facility types.
Thank you, Doug. I wonder if it would be valuable for us to have, as a group, have some idea of the number and type of facilities that will be involved in ET3. Does that seem to ring true for some folks, that maybe we should try to get an estimate of the size of the issue?
Yeah, Clay, that's exactly what I was thinking about just now. I think it would be helpful for all the stakeholders to actually start. I think maybe, Neil, this might be a good thing to put some information together on, to say, okay, for example, rural health centers. If you have a list of rural health centers around the country, then states could start looking at that list and see if these are in fact places that those states already have in their state lists and they've designated them as something like a clinic? Or are these in fact places that states generally have not accounted for in their existing lists yet? And same thing for the Federal Health Qualified Health Center and the Qualified Healthcare Partners, really to kind of see how much overlap there is.
Yeah, thank you, Josh. I'm taking a note on that. I will have to spend some time looking at the FQHCs and the RHCs, but the Qualified Healthcare Partner, since that one is really ET3 specific, that's probably the one that will have the most overlap as far as I could tell. But I think that as the next step of analysis, I think that's dead on. So definitely taking a note on that. Thank you.
Yeah, Amber, I am cognizant of the fact that you have you're having to multitask right now. No problem with that. Are you free to discuss your chat a little bit? If not, that's fine. Okay, great. Would love to just hear as we try to draw some parameters around this idea. Are there other states who may want to chime in a little bit? Some of the immediate questions, I guess, that come to mind is, do states want to know the ET3 designation for facilities for those participating in the model across their individual states? And others see real problems with collisions? Thank you, Juan. I appreciate your comments. And Amber as well. Other states, any thoughts? Okay. Okay, great. All right, so let's do a final call for any other questions or thoughts related to that specific topic. Okay, it looks like we have some further discussions to be held regarding that topic, and maybe some homework to see if we can do a better job of kind of circumscribing the issue and providing some context to just how big of an issue this might be. So we'll work on those things and get back to you to this group. All right, the other topic that I know we can dig down a little bit on, Neil was able to share a little bit more information on Monday regarding a potential schedule for testing among the vendors. Neil, do you want to take the floor for a moment and kind of share some thoughts with the participants on the call?
Oh, sure. Thank you, Dr. Mann. If you don't mind, I will try to just share a quick one slide that should have quite a bit of the pertinent info. So if you don't mind, I'll try to do that.
Great. Thanks, Neil.
So is this visible now?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, the big takeaway I would like to share with everybody is we are looking at coordinating some testing on the week of October 12th to the 16th. The kind of the testing that we foresee that will overlap with vendors' needs and vendors' interests, I think, is more about the registration and getting access to the ET3 systems for submission, and then actually conducting some data submission testing specifically on the 14th, which would be the Wednesday, I believe, of that week. A big piece for us, partly because of just where we're at in terms of the model's life, meaning that we're still not in the implementation phase. And you know, with EMS agencies and their vendor support, what we'd ask is for any vendors who are interested, certainly reach out to the TAC for coordination and express your interest. And from there, since ET3 has an existing collaboration with the TAC, they'll bring everybody on board with us, and we'll just clear. I think there's a lot of moving pieces here. So for quite a number of reasons, we foresee the coordination with the TAC on this piece as really vital. But the key point is this is the time frame that we're looking at with testing our systems and getting some validation with our vendor support. And then this is kind of the two big items that we'd like to test. So let me pause there and take any questions, either Dr. Mann or from any of the vendors on the line.
Neil,
So actually,
Neil, this
sorry,
is
go
Eric.
ahead.
I think that is the SEMSO's annual meeting week, and I'm not sure when the data managers are scheduled to meet. I have not seen that level of agenda. Oops, sorry. Does anyone have that agenda on the call?
Eric, I don't know that they published the agenda, but it is that week.
Yeah, I know it's that week. I'm just trying to, I'm trying to figure out when, how much conflict that is. Let me check online real quick and see if I see it.
Yeah, maybe while you're
John
checking.
Beckett. Sorry, Dr. Mann, did you have something?
Yeah, sorry, Neil. While Eric's checking that, I'm not sure what the vendor's role is this time with the online meeting for NSM. So everything is so different. Do vendors see personnel conflicts for who might be participating in the NSMSO meeting for at least for technical folks who may want to be testing? Well, Eric, while you're looking for that, let's see if we can open it up to other vendors in regards to this scheduling. Others have thoughts?
This is Ben from Image Trend, and I know we've got a couple folks on the call. I do know there's just some internal conversation for us that there's a little bit of concern with testing October 12th and going live just 2 months later. I mean, we got a lot of things going on, and data dictionary is not being finalized. Just kind of contributing to the conversation that these turnarounds are getting pretty narrow. I will also say, we've had a conversation recently, right? A billing company that's working with one of these ET3 selected agencies came to us asking for an export, right? And we kind of had to say, we need you to hold on. So, we've got all of the ET3 selected agencies and organizations. They're already doing a lot of legwork on their end to prepare, and just understanding how things move, how fast they move, and you've got all of these different parties. We just kind of want to make sure that it's clear, the success of this overall project. We have to have time to develop and push things into production.
Thanks, Ben.
Ben, this is Eric. I completely agree. When we talked about this as far back as the first of the year, there was an agreement that we would have 3 months from the time that everything would be set up until we would actually start collecting data. That was the timeline that the vendors had asked for. So we've conveyed that to Neil. I'm just passing that information along. I looked at the NSMSO website, and it just says that more detailed information when the week will be forthcoming, but there's nothing there. I can check with Dia and find out if there's a specific timeline set up and get back to you, Neil. But I would say that Monday is a federal holiday. I know they're still planning on doing things Monday evening. It depends on the way the information reads. There'll be 1 hour sessions throughout the week. I don't know that they're going to plan on doing a full day or half a day like they've done in the past. So let me find out some more information. We can keep it at October 14th for now, or push it a week and That's up to you.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Cheney. I think, John Beckett, if you wouldn't mind, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe we had really had about half a day in mind on the 14th for some of the submission. If we need to go a whole day or adjust the part of the day, I think that's still fairly doable. And certainly, yeah, we're under the federal holiday as well too with October 12th. So that was just for the sake of putting in that work week. But I think the hard date that we really had in mind for that week was the 14th, but there's some flexibility in there for sure. And if it's really a major conflict within the SEMSO meeting, we'll gladly take that back and see what we can do with rescheduling.
Let me find
John,
out.
was there anything else?
Let me
Sorry.
find out this afternoon, and we'll get an email back out to you to let you know, and then we can adjust then. Do you need all of vendor participation? Do you need just a few of them? When you talk about this testing, who are you anticipating? Everybody tests? Some? A few?
Great question. I guess that gets to some of it. It's really whoever is available. If we can get every vendor who is going to be supporting a selected applicant for ET3, great. But any participation on this testing would be a tremendous help for us, and it's anyone who's available and interested, certainly. By no means is this a requirement. It would certainly benefit us to have more, but any help with this would be an absolute boon to our work.
Okay, and then are you going to schedule them, like, do all of them come together at the same time on that particular day? Or are you going to schedule, like one or two every half hour? Or, I'm just having a little bit of trouble understanding how it's going to play out.
Yeah. So hey Neil, if I can jump in, we're still in the planning phases for this test. We did one in July, and that was with a really smaller group of, less than 5 participants were involved. And there, we just basically took the morning and, let's say take an hour for registration. And then the other 2 hours, we were allowing for the submission of PCR transactions. And, you should be able to get, a quick response back immediately once you submit it. And then obviously, if there's any errors or issues that you're having, we would be able to take those offline and work directly with you offline on those. So I kind of see that as the approach that we're going to try and take this time around as well. Typically we got everybody on a, let's say a Zoom meeting call, and we walk everybody through the process. So that's that might give you a little bit of some ideas around how this is going to work.
Right. Thanks, John. So there's a piece that we can all do together, but also we're happy to accommodate schedules for different developers. If it's one of those situations where we have to stagger things with different hours, I think we're open. We still have the flexibility to do that. So
yeah,
that's absolutely a flexibility we can work with.
All right, any other comments regarding the schedule listed here, or any comments about the detail of this process? I'm sure we'll have an opportunity to firm up some scheduling ideas and get additional information out regarding this kind of onboarding process to make sure that it runs more smoothly. We will meet again with the ET3 team next Monday, so we can try to formalize some things associated with the schedule. We just wanted to make sure you were aware of the latest thoughts regarding this, and wanted to get initial ideas. Any further information folks would like to share? Okay, good. Just to get back real quickly to one of the questions that were raised by Kelly that was important. Image Trend sent an email to us just asking for further clarification regarding facility types that are outlined as custom values in eDisposition.21. And we provided some initial information regarding those that Neil was able to share with us. Are there others interested in receiving that information more quickly, we're happy to share that we're going to try to formalize that in kind of an FAQ format, or in kind of a white paper document with running questions. We're still trying to figure out how to best kind of accommodate this frequently asked questions format, but that is high on our list also of things to try to attempt to begin to finalize. But anybody interested in receiving that information like today? Okay, heard from James from ESO. Happy to share. Anyone else?
Clay, do you have any idea of when that FAQ white sheet would be available?
Yeah, great question, Kelly. No, I apologize. We're just now trying to organize these thoughts and trying to put these things together. So we'll try to have some more definitive information by the end of the week.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you though for asking. Yep. Yeah, and I'll share my screen one more time if that's okay, Jillian, just to make sure folks can take a last look at the questions and see if there's any further information. Already I've heard from Heidi and from Jen and from Steve. We'll make sure that you get a copy of that. Thank you.
Dr. Mann, if I could.
Oh yeah, please no. Yeah, please.
Yeah, if I might just add a couple bits of information from at least ET3 side on some of these items. First, I think number 8 on a FAQ, ET3, we are in the writing of different fact sheets and facts related to data submissions. And certainly we're working on questions that we've gotten before and we've perceived would be some, really key information items. But if there are some questions, and just to make sure we're addressing the questions and not missing anything, please do by all means, reach out to the ET3 inbox as well as to the TAC, and we'll make sure as we're drafting these and trying to get them finalized that we include the questions that you really have in mind. I think the other thing I would like to add about the testing is by no means, please do not be under the impression that the October testing timeframe is really the only testing timeframe that we have in mind for this. That is the earliest that we have, but we are moving forward on the assumption that we will need subsequent tests between now and when the model goes live. And certainly we would want to hear if there is a better time frame for the majority of vendors for when you all would believe you're in a better place to actually do some of this testing, and we can work on that. The reason we put October up is that's the soonest one that we've already arranged. So if I could just leave it at that. So thanks, Dr. Mann.
And Clay, this is Josh. One additional comment on the facility type information, which you'll be sending out to several people. I was also just doing a quick check a moment ago. It looks like the NPI registry contains information about the FQHC and RHC designations. And so we could add a little bit of additional information about how to use NPI to look those up. That way state data managers could see the actual places in their state that have those designations.
Oh, okay, thank you, Josh. Good find. Yeah, let's look into that today. That could be very helpful. Thanks for the message.
Clay, this is James the Striker.
Yeah, James.
I have a question. Could you confirm for me, please? Because last week it seemed like we were sending data to the state, and for ET3, and the states were sending it to CMS. Are we submitting directly to CMS, or are we submitting to the states?
You're sending directly to CMS.
Okay.
Right. So
yeah, the diagram that we saw last week, I could have swore it looked like that we were sending directly to the state, and the state was sending the data. So that was a little confusing for me.
Oh yeah, sorry, James. Yeah. So the updated ET data flow diagram is here. So feel free to review this.
Perfect. Thanks for
Great.
confirming that.
Yeah, thanks, James. No, that's great.
The only information that's going through the state and national to ET3 is agency demographic data that the national database has already received.
Yeah,
but all the patient care reporting will go straight to CMS.
Great, thanks, Josh.
Thanks for the question, James.
One more.
Juan, did you have a question?
Yes, as far as the facility codes, are the ET3 expecting NPI codes in the facility code field? Or are they going to take the state code that we created?
I think the plan is to take the state code. It's been a couple months since we discussed that. I don't know if anyone else remembers differently.
No, I would agree. I would agree with that.
Okay.
Thanks, Juan. All right, any other initial questions? All right, thank you. This has been an incredibly helpful conversation. Let's see. I'm just checking the chat, Jaylan. Let's see. All right, fantastic. Thank you. Oh, Ann, yeah. Yeah, Ann, you need to be unmuted. Okay, Chris, can you unmute Ann Vosnick for a comment?
I think Anne has been unmuted, but we're still not getting anything from her.
Okay. Okay, and I apologize. I may not, your audio may not be correctly connected. Sorry about that. We'll come back to you though. Clearly we have a couple more items to cover. Would love to hear from you. All right, so last call for any comments regarding just these initial items. We had some initial discussions. As mentioned, we'll formalize a number of these things and keep you right on the loop. All of the data set requirements associated with this are scheduled to be completed this week. So we will continue to work through those things. Josh, one more related topic, of course, is to talk a little bit about the ET3 Schematron file. Can you again give us kind of a quick update on where we are with that?
Yes, I'd be happy to, and I'll go ahead and take the screen sharing back for a second here. So 2 weeks ago, we announced that we had put out a Schematron file for ET3 and that it was open for review and feedback. We'd like to get any feedback that you have by the end of this week so that we can go ahead and finalize it next week at the end of the month. I am showing you a spreadsheet that we published along with the Schematron file that lists the rules that are in that file. I thought it'd be helpful for you to just see the 30 or so rules that have been created. So there's several, just making sure that the transfer of care date time is in the correct order if it was an ET3 treatment in place disposition. Then some things about patient demographics that should be filled out if it was an ET3 disposition. One of those 3 dispositions that ET3 is interested in as their alternatives. And then the last few are related to the custom elements that ET3 has defined, and just making sure that the data that comes in on those custom elements is meeting the expectations. However, these rules will not preclude additional custom values coming in for the ones that are extending elements. So in other words, if an agency is working in a state where they have extended incident patient disposition with additional custom values, you can go ahead and send those custom values to ET3. ET3 will just rely on the fallback values for those, except in the cases where you're sending an ET3 custom value. So there's nothing that's going to reject the reports in that area. But if you do send an ET3 custom value, we have some checks regarding those. And you'll also note that every rule in this file is a warning. There are no errors. So at this time, the only thing that would cause ET3 to reject a data submission would be an XSD error or a national schematron error. And as you know, there are very few national schematron errors. Most of those are warnings as well. So again, a couple more days to provide feedback on these rules, and we'll go ahead and finalize them by the end of the month. All right, thanks, Clay.
Yeah, thanks, Josh. Appreciate that. Any questions for Josh? All right. All right. Thank you. I'll close out the ET3 conversation. Julianne, I'll turn it back over to you.
All right. The next item on our agenda is just a reminder about the upcoming public trainings. On October 6th, we're going to spend a little bit of time talking about ways to improve the quality of state data. Dr. Mann and Kevin White will be working with us on that presentation. And then November 3rd, Josh Legler is going to do state data set training for collect data software developers. So those flyers will be coming through Google Group and also the NSEMSO DMC listserv. Any questions on public trainings that are coming up? And as always, if you have ideas or requests for topics or issues that would be valuable to do as a large group training, we are happy to take those suggestions. Next on the agenda is items from the Office of EMS. Eric, was there anything that you wanted to share with the group today?
Nothing specific. I do just want to say real quick couple comments about the ET3 process. We've talked about this for a long time. We've talked about the timeline. There's a lot of moving parts. I would like to get some feedback from the vendors that are on the phone. And I responded to Ann's comment about not having all of someone else about not having all the vendors on this call. I think what we're going to do is do a reach out to the vendors that are involved in this process and make sure that we do have a list of everybody who has an ET3 model participant in it. Make sure we have them on board on our end. And then I'm concerned, and I would like to hear from the vendors about just kind of the overall picture. Ben brought it up. I think Ben from ImageTrend brought it up. There's a lot going on. The timing of this, we want to get it out there. I'm not trying to say we should have held up or anything, but starting this the first of the year is also starting at a time when vendors are doing compliance testing. It's starting at around the holiday time. It's starting when people are doing their end of year closeouts. For some folks, it's a budget year end as well. So I'm very cognizant that there's a lot going on, and we're going to have to try to work with each other to do the best we can to roll this out in an efficient manner. So if there's things that we can do to make the process a little bit easier, or if there's things that we need to address, please let me know what they are. If you have concerns, I'd like to hear them sooner rather than later. And we will we'll do everything we can to make the process easier. Like I said, we didn't pick the timeline. We want to get this out. There's a lot of reasons. COVID kind of changed the whole process around on us. And I'm not trying to make excuses for anyone or excuses for how decisions were made, but I can see a lot of conflict. And I know you are busy just meeting the normal day-to-day operations, let alone the COVID questions, the ketamine questions, the racial and ethnic bias and EMS questions, so on and so forth. So with that, bear with us. Let us know what we can do to make it a little bit easier, and we'll kind of move ahead from there. I have nothing else for the version 3 process other than, I guess, just one more thing, staying with the timelines. It came up at the meeting last week about, we pushed back 6 months on version 3.5. Would we do that again? We're still staying with the 6 months. We haven't talked about changing that. If that's something that we need to readdress, we can go back and have that conversation again. But that's not a hard, fast date where everybody has to be in one spot at that particular point in time in life. So I think that one's a little bit manageable. These other things are a little bit more date oriented, so to speak. So let's see where everybody falls out in the process with what they need in terms of assistance and what they think are the big obstacles, and we'll see what we can do to help them. Otherwise, I'm open for questions, comments, or concerns that anyone has about anything NEMSIS or ET3 related. Thanks, Julianne. If anyone has anything or anything pops up, feel free. Most of you have my cell number, and if you don't, just shoot me an email and I'll make sure you have it. We can discuss anything you want. Thank you all for your time.
Thank you, Eric. Are there any other questions, comments, concerns that anyone would like to bring up? All right. Our next V3 implementation meeting won't be till October 14th. We always do them on the 2nd and 4th Wednesdays of the month. So for October, it will be the 14th and the 28th. Let us know if there are topics or issues that you would like addressed on these V3 calls, and we're happy to add those to the agenda. Thank you, everyone, for being with us this morning. We appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedules. We appreciate the input and the feedback. Thank you, and have a terrific day, everyone. Thanks.
Thank you, everyone.